righty, it is 5 o'clock. We will go ahead and begin this meeting of the Kokomo City Board of Zoning Appeals. I would invite you all to join us as we stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance and have a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would ask if anyone has a cell phone, if you'd make sure you turn that to silent. And at this time, before we get into any of the cases, we will turn things over to our attorney. The beginning of the year, we always start with a clean slate and elect new officers.
I didn't realize I was doing that.
Or I'll turn it over to you to turn over to Mr. Sheehan.
I'm happy to if you'd prefer to.
Do you usually do that?
Okay. Doesn't matter.
I'm a year older than the last time we did this, so
Thank you.
my memory's not as...
Thank you. Appreciate that. We'll open the floor at this time for nominations for Chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I nominate Mr. Jansen.
Second.
Moving nominations be closed.
Support.
All in favor?
If there's no other nominations, all in favor of Mr. Jansen, please sign aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, now it's you.
All right, well,
Thank
thank
you,
you all. All right, I guess we will now entertain a motion for Vice President.
I nominate Ms. Rink.
Seconded.
I move nominations are closed.
You want to second that one?
Seconded.
Oh, all right, good. So we have a motion for Lisa Rink to be the Vice President, Vice Chair, whatever the title is, the Vice. Moved and seconded, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, thank you. All righty. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the Tuesday, December 5th, 2017 meeting.
Motion, we accept the minutes as printed.
Seconded.
All right, moved and seconded to approve those, all in favor?
Aye.
Sounds like nobody's opposed. Okay, next item is case 1 AA 17.
Actually, Mr. President, before we get into that, I would like to introduce Victoria Colazzi. She has taken Rachel's place, so she'll be getting all the correspondence for you folks for your BZA meeting. So I just want to bring her here tonight and introduce her so you can all get to meet her face to face.
Thank you.
The first case is case 1AA17, and we're going to ask for a continuance on that case. That is the Burkhardt Advertising Notice of our violation letters. So we're going to ask that case be continued again. So we will start with case 6, SE17, the petition of Valerie Graham for Simply Divine, requesting a special exception for a residential group home in an R5 zone on property described as Chandler Edition, Lot 21, Center Township, Kokomo, Howard County, Indiana, at 1110 East Sycamore Street. And the petitioner is here.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion regarding this case?
I move that we approve case number 6SE17 and adopt the findings of the petitioner as those of the board and make those findings part of the record.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Have any board members had any ex parte communication regarding this case? No. Okay, thank you. All right, if the petitioner, if you could state your name and address for the record and then kind of tell the board what it is that you're here to request from us this evening.
Okay, my name is George Brown with Simply Divine. Address is 4165 Millersville Road in Indianapolis, 46205. We're here requesting a special exemption for a residential group home in R5 zone, 1110 East Sycamore. Wanting to request the exemption to allow for group home exemption to allow 8 to 10 individuals to live in the home who are seeking drug counseling and rehabilitation.
Okay.
The residential use, I'm going to go ahead and read the petitioner's findings.
Okay?
Residential use will not be injurious to the public health or safety. The development standards for the requested development use are as prescribed in the zoning ordinance. The exception will not subvert general purposes served by the zoning ordinance, and the proposed use will be consistent with the character of the district.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Sheeline, maybe backing up, well, just following up with Mr. Brown's opening statements, could you just kind of explain what's going on? I mean, why we need to approve this, or why we hear this case?
Any time that you're in a residential area and we do something along this nature, you do have to apply for the special exception. So there can be a public hearing in case there are neighbors who have an issue. While it is something that is needed, sometimes it's not in the best location. So
Right.
that's why we have the special exception, and that's why the petitioner's here before us tonight.
Okay, thank you. All right, for those who may be here, this is for the first time, the Board of Zoning Appeals, basically what we do, the city has laws, has ordinances, and petitioners can come and say, will you change the law for my property? Sometimes that means, sometimes the law says, here's what the law is, these special exceptions are allowed on this property. So petitioners come to our board, they present their case, and our board says, okay, have they presented a decent enough case or not? There will be a time in every case where we open the floor to people who'd like to be heard regarding this, in favor or against. In every case I've been here for, and every case I will be here for. So if this is your first time, welcome. Okay, so you've read your findings of fact. Mr. Sheeline's kind of explained, so that was kind of for your sake. Hopefully you didn't think, wow, the board doesn't even know why they're here. If you could maybe explain to us, so what exactly is your hope with the property then?
Like I said, just to use it as a residential facility for folks who are needing drug rehabilitation and treatment.
So will it just be a residence, or will there be the rehab program? Is your goal to have the rehab program there, or that they would just live there and go somewhere else for rehab?
Yeah, the initial thrust of the facility is to provide housing. Any counseling, treatment services would be provided at another location.
Okay, is there any kind of partnership or no? Like already established with any kind of treatment facility?
Currently, no. We have worked with some organizations here in town. Simply Divine is accredited with the Department of Mental Health and Addictions. We are a residential service provider and a clinical services provider, and really have our own operations in Indianapolis primarily, but have looked to provide services in other communities that need services.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this point, are there other questions from the board members?
Is there going to be kind of structured environment supervision or anything for these people that's there, or?
Yes, and I didn't have, we've got brochures about our program that we can live with each of the members here, but yes, it is a structured environment. It provides a sober living environment for folks who are coming out of incarceration and in need of drug treatment services. So yes, there is a structured program. There is supervision, random drug testing, clinical services, addiction counseling, and that type of.
Is that person a live-in person?
Yes.
Weekend operations, what are we going to do on weekends? Weekends,
24/7.
24/7?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your typical client? Do they drive? Are they?
I'm going to bring up our Simply Divine CEO. I'm kind of the financial guy, so this is kind of a little bit.
I'm kind of new in my role with Simply Divine as CEO.
And I'm sorry, and I'll ask anyone who comes to the microphone ever, the first time if you come up, would you please state your name and address so that we have that for the record as well?
Well, I'm Nathan Rush, 4165 Millersville Road, Indianapolis, Indiana, Suite 101. It's our mailing address, and I'm the CEO newly, and what we do at Simply Divine is provide structured residential housing for people going through an addiction program. We have 3 days of ILT that the individuals that are living in our residences go through, and we have a relapse prevention in addition to the 3 days of ILT. We have a relapse prevention. We have a specialty group, particularly if people have been involved in trauma. As we know, our state is in the midst of a opioid epidemic, and many of the people that we serve have experienced other people dying from overdose, so it's pretty traumatic on a person. So a lot of times when you're drug addicted, what you rely on is your drugs to get you through those sort of things. So we teach people how to manage those emotions and feelings. That's part of what we do at Simply Divine. Typically, a person comes in our program and stay in that that intense part of our program for 90 days. Because of the way services are provided in Indiana, we can do that with people, and then after 90 days, we can start to help them seek employment and start to get back into the workforce. But it takes a little while for people to go. So that's part of the reason for a residential program, for people can be in a safe place where they won't be have access to drugs and other activities that go along with that.
90 days is the average.
Average. Some people may be coming off a relapse where they need 30 days, but the length, it usually tops out at around 90 days, and I'm just giving you estimates. Because everybody who comes through our program gets an assessment. Some people it's their first time in a treatment program, and they need 90 days. And some people have been in and out of jail for a long time. They may not need that much time. So we're not really say that we have a bunch of pristine citizens that we're going to be moving in the group. There's need for supervision. There's need for intense services. We recognize that and realize that.
Are these Kokomo, Howard County residents? Is that the clientele that we?
Yeah, that's the idea. How we got up here is we were approached to come up here to Kokomo. Me, new in my role as CEO, we know that there are some things that we don't know about the community and how we got here. We're not in that same relationship that brought us here. So we had this on the document, and so we wanted to follow through on what we were up to as a professional way of saying. We sought this out prior to me coming, and so now that we're here, we want to see if we can make it happen. And so we know that the need is great all over our state, not just in Kokomo, in Indianapolis as well. So I want to bring that opportunity here.
So is this a property that Simply Divine owns, or would be purchasing, or would be renting?
I think
or?
we own the property, George. Yeah, we own the property.
Okay.
I'm more of the clinical side.
Sure.
George is the money guy, or our CFO, so.
Okay.
Explain whether services are.
I have a question. First of all, I believe in rehabilitation, but under the criminal justice offenders, because of where the house is located, you're smack in the middle of two schools.
Okay.
Who is going to decide who they take in as far as, are these only people that have been arrested over drugs, or could it be child pornography, pedophiles, where kids walk up and down that street going to school? That's what my biggest concern is.
I can respect that. And I don't want to stand here and tell you that the folks that we have, some of those folks may have some of those issues. But what makes them eligible for us is a program called Recovery Works. And I'm not certain, can't tell you off the top of my head, if Recovery Works have those restrictions. But for a person to be eligible for Recovery Works, they have to be a felon, absolutely. They have to be involved in either probation specialty court, drug court, or some sort of court like it, or parole to even be eligible for our services with Recovery Works. So to answer your question, I'm not certain if the folks that will be in our residence are without some sort of other criminal history. We don't take sex offenders, George was just telling me. So, but I know that Recovery Works has restrictions, and so if they're Recovery Works eligible, that's who we take. But we don't take sex offenders.
Okay. One of the biggest concerns.
Okay. Any other questions from the board for the petitioner at this point?
Employment, do some of your clients,
Pardon?
are they placed in employment? Are some of your?
We are trying to establish ourselves up here in Kokomo. In Indianapolis, absolutely. We have employers that call us looking for, because what we realize is when people work a good program of recovery and they follow through with all the things that's required, they know how to be on time, they know how to do what they need to do to be a great employee. So we get a lot of employers that partner with us. Haven't established that in Kokomo yet, have we, George? No, so we haven't yet made that sort of establishment here.
Do family, friends typically visit the residents, visit with clients?
There is visitation. We do have a family component that we have added, that because what we try to do a lot of times when the addict is in their addiction, they really do a lot of horrible things to their family. So we do some things that involve the family as well. So.
What I'm trying to get at with some of these questions is just the amount of traffic or traffic patterns, the amount of public transportation that clients might need to use. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
The typical, the way it works is a lot of their day is spent in groups. So there won't be like, and they only have visitation hours like on weekends. When those, we don't have visitation hours through unless it's weekends. So I can tell you that it only will be a weekend situation. Yeah.
Thank you.
So are there, I don't know how I want to word the question, but like set hours where the residents would have to be in by a certain time?
Absolutely.
And
They have a
and are there
curfew.
Curfew,
They definitely have a curfew. They have restrictions. And like George said earlier, they have random urine screens. Because we're not, and people that, like I said, people who are eligible for Recovery Works, they're attached to some sort of custody. So they're not just, walking in like you go to a 12-step meeting. 12-step meetings, people can just go and come as they wish. But when they come to us, we're working with their parole officer or their probation officer or the specialty court that they're assigned to us through.
All right, any other questions at this point from the board? If not, what I'll do is, you do?
Yeah, drug addiction's a very, very difficult hurdle to overcome. I'm wondering about your relapse rate, success rates for your clientele and at some of your residences. And
well, what we do is evidence-based interventions with our practices. We use the matrix model, our therapists do, and the fidelity rate is, well, if they're practicing fidelity of the model, the rate of relapse is minimal. So it's in accordance to, if you have professional staff, and that's what we have licensed clinical therapists on our team, and they're following the fidelity of the model, we have some pretty good outcomes. To tell you what the exact rates are off the top of my head, but we only use science-based programming. We although we allow our participants to attend 12-step meetings, and that's sort of anecdotal, but the programs that we employ at our facilities are evidence-based programs.
How many will you have staffed in this house where people?
In the facility with 10 to 12 people, it's typically 1 to 2 staff members. And then they, not counting the therapists and the support staff that they have, like we're having our individuals be paired up with a recovery coach. So on any given day, it might be, you know, the direct staff who are like there to kind of manage the place. And then we have recovery coaches who may be there for a few hours working with them to help them work through other areas that are not covered by the therapist and by their recovery plan.
Okay.
Just want to be clear again, you have not identified a drug rehab facility that you would work with
Here in Kokomo,
here in Kokomo?
we did have, and this is prior to me coming. I know if we get, there's going to require, before we could get up and running, it will require us to come and meet with people, and some of that stuff happened. We had another CEO, and if you know, George, if who we worked with in the past up here, you know, that sort of.
Yeah, the primary recovery works provider is Community, Howard Community, I think is now the old Howard Regional. But Howard Community Hospital is the primary recovery work specialist. And I forget the name, there are some other behavioral organizations, I want to say Buena Vista or some folks like that, who we're looking to partner with that have qualified therapists that we can probably work with up in this area instead of having our people come from Indianapolis.
So, yeah, we would have to do some legwork to establish those, because we know we can't operate just by us. We know that we need to have relationships with other entities in the community, employers, other places they can stand down or move to, and you know, that whole thing. And so what we do, me as CEO, what I try to do is establish all those other relationships that are needed to support the individual.
All right, thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Sheeline at this time to read the staff findings, and then, because you might have other things that you want to bring up after we hear the staff findings as well, so.
He already read it, so we can.
Okay.
We'll just look.
So just so you guys know, the petitioner just presented his findings of fact. There were certain points that have to be met. He presented those to us and said, here are the things, here's how I'm answering your questions. But we also have the other side. We have the city, the staff. That's the staff report. So the staff covers those same things and says, from the city standpoint, here's our interpretation of this, whether these things are issues or not. So at this point, we'll hear the staff findings, and then we'll continue this kind of questioning, see, you know, so we have a better idea what's going on. Mr. Sheehan?
Yeah, staff findings for case 67 SE 17. The proposal will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. It is possible the proposal could be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare for the community. The proposed request is for a group home that will house approximately 8 to 10 individuals with substance use disorder, criminal justice offenders, parolees, and individuals in reentry programs. It is unknown whether any of petitioner's staff will be living on site as well. Given the turnaround of new clients every 90 to 180 days, together with the success rate of only 25% of petitioner's clients being acclimated back into society, it is possible this group home could be injurious to the community, and more specifically this particular neighborhood. The requirements and development standards for the requested use as prescribed of this ordinance will be met. The building meets the minimum requirements for front and side yard setback requirements on this zoning district. It is currently believed the development standards and front and side yard setback requirements for an R5 district will be met, as staff has not been advised of any construction to the structures. However, this property does not have sufficient private parking to accommodate 8 to 10 clients at any given time, plus any petitioner staff that may reside at the property as well, plus any outside service providers petitioner might retain to assist their clients, i.e. therapists, nurses, social workers, etc. The granting of the exception will not subvert the general purposes served by this zoning ordinance and will not permanently injure other property or uses in the same district and vicinity. According to ordinance 3.13, this board should allow a special exception use in an R5 district only when it clearly is a benefit to the residential component of the development. One of the standards in the R5 district is to protect, maintain, and promote the old residential character in Kokomo. By allowing this special exception, neighbors and potential home buyers may find this use inconsistent with the surrounding community due to the proposed use. The proposed use will be consistent with the character of the district therein, the spirit and intent of this zoning ordinance, and the Kokomo Comprehensive Plan. The staff does not find the proposed use consistent with the current neighborhood, and it does not believe, based on the known information, that the use fits the intent or spirit of the zoning ordinance. This is a quiet, high-density urban residential neighborhood with almost exclusive single-family homes. The proposed use calls for 8 to 10 temporary residents, and given the service objectives offered by the petitioner, it is assumed the staff will be present at the home along with a variety of mental health and social workers. With very little parking, private parking, this will create an influx of traffic along Sycamore Street.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board after hearing both the petitioner's findings and his questions, or his answering your questions, and also the staff findings? Any questions, especially for Mr. Sheeline or Mr. Brown or Mr. Rush? If there aren't questions from the, okay.
No.
Mr. Brown?
Just the only comment, the one issue that came up and I heard a lot about is parking. Most of our guests do not have cars. Parking is typically not an issue at our facility. So I know it's just the residential character of the neighborhood, but our residents and guests don't have cars, so that's not really a big issue.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there anyone in the audience who would like to be heard regarding this case? Okay, if so, if you'd please step to the microphone. And as I mentioned, please state your name and address for the record, and then we'll do our best to answer our questions, or we'll have Mr. Brown.
My
and
name
Mr.
is
Rush.
Adrienne Brown. I live at 1105 East Walnut Street, almost directly behind 1110. I oppose of this. I know rehabilitation is a good thing, but as far as parking, there's not enough parking for anybody, for visitors. There's not enough parking if they have 24-hour supervision. And most of the questions was asked by Lisa and Mr. Mike about the 24-hour supervision and the parking. And if we didn't have fences between our yard, the people, their clients, would be able to walk back and forth through everybody's yard, mine in particular, and my next door neighbor. And I just don't think that they will have enough security, and I oppose.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Hello, my name is Samariel Cameron. I'm a resident here in Kokomo, Indiana. I live next door to the proposed residential group home. I live next door, I'm a neighbor. So I'm here to represent pretty much our neighborhood. I went around to our neighbors and we've all discussed, well, I've discussed with some of our neighbors, most of them all on the same street that is where this house is located at. And we've got a petition here from all the neighbors in this area. No one at all agrees to accepting the use of the house, that particular home, as a residential group home. We find that it could be injurious to our neighborhood. There are children located in this neighborhood, and as Ms. Rink stated earlier, we have two schools, one, the Kokomo Central High School up on Apperson Way, and then we have the other one, which is Sycamore School, which both are elementary schools, down further south on Sycamore Street. So we have a lot of children in this area. For this area to be open to group offenders, parolees, mentally unstable people, homeless people, we feel that it is actually injurious to our neighborhood. I feel that when you, Mr. Sheeline, Is that how
I've been
you?
called worse.
I'm sorry if I'm not
Pretty
pronouncing
close.
it
You're very
correctly. When you read the findings of fact by the staff, it was really very, very good. I think it's an overview of what most of the residents in this neighborhood are thinking or feeling, that the residential group home does not fit the overall spirit of the special exception for the residential home. It just does not, with the 8 to 10 residents, with all of the influx of the workers, the problem with the parking. It just has too many obstacles to overcome. We feel, of course, that anything to help those who are in need, those who are trying to recover, that are trying to get on their feet, that are trying to get back into society, of course, we're all there to back them and to help them however we can. But to open our neighborhood up to this area of influx of people, we feel would be injurious to our neighborhood. So I just want to let you guys know, I don't know how I submit our petition, but I like to submit it. I'll bring it up then after I finish speaking to let you know, to reflect the intent and the thoughts and the feelings of our neighborhood, of our opposition to this residential group home. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard regarding this case? All right, Mr. Brown or Mr. Rush, would either one of you like to address any of the questions or concerns that have been brought forth? If so, please step back up. If not, it's your call.
Only thing I'd like to say is if, we have found the wrong location, or the spot that we picked, and because one of the things that is important to us too is the community. So we will also like to, at some other point, figure out what can work in Kokomo and work with somebody else to do it, because we think the services that we provide are unique and different than a lot of other entities out there. And so if this doesn't get granted, then we still would like to think about in the future of how we could work with people up here in Kokomo. So,
Yeah, I've been in affordable housing for 20-some years, and it's always a NIMBY, not in my backyard, issue. And I'm sure you may have seen these type of situations before where everybody wants to really be helpful, but not anywhere in my backyard. So that's just the nature of the beast with affordable housing and trying to help low-income folks. At some point, we say folks have got to go somewhere. So just leave it at that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I would say if you, if this does not pass, you guys might look like online, Kokomo Tribune, Kokomo Perspective, see that there's a lot going on in Kokomo in regards to this discussion, and probably be able to find some names there to get in contact with. And I was going to mention, Mr. Brown, you mentioned it, the NIMBY, not in my backyard. This board sees that a lot, whether it's a convenience store or a car lot or a car wash or a house with a bigger garage or this or that. This board does take that into consideration. We all live in a variety of neighborhoods, in Kokomo, and it's not real often that the city says, the staff findings say not in this, the city says, or the staff in this case says, we think this isn't probably the best location. So anyway, which I guess is not the city's, the city's not saying not in my backyard. They're saying not in this yard, in their opinion. I will read this so we have this. I'll pass it on for the record, but it says to Kokomo City Board of Zoning Appeals, we the people of the neighborhood of the Chandler Addition do oppose the following. Obtainment of special exception for residential group home for the property described as Chandler Addition Lot 21, Center Township, Kokomo, Howard County. It is to our dissatisfaction to turn this property to a group home in that there are young children, ages 1 year and 4-year-old next door to this property and around the premises of this property. We would like our neighborhood to remain a single-family dwelling or single-dwelling neighborhood for now and in the future. Signed in opposition of the zoning ordinance, and then there are the signatures and addresses of people throughout the neighborhood. So, looks like about almost 3 pages worth, so I will pass that down. All right, anyone else in the audience wishing to be heard regarding this case? Any questions or comments from the board at this point? Okay, we do have a motion and a second on the floor for case 6 SE 17. The motion and second are in favor of that, of the approval. All in favor of the approval indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed indicate by saying nay.
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 Okay, we'll need to take a roll call vote.
Mr. Besser?
Nay.
Ms. Rink?
Nay.
Mr. Hager?
Aye.
Mr. Jansen?
Nay.
It is defeated 3 votes to 1.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. All right, our next case on the agenda is case 1V18.
Yes, 1V18, a petition of Featherstone Construction requesting a variance of 2 feet to section 3.8 median front yard setback, as well as minimum build line within the Waters Edge Section 2 subdivision on property described as Waters Edge Subdivision, Section 2, Lot 7, Taylor Township, Kokomo, Howard County, Indiana, at 3313 Artisan Drive.
Thank
And
you.
Mr. Featherstone here to represent this case.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion regarding case 1V18?
I move that we approve case number 1V18 and adopt the findings of the petitioner as those of the board and make those findings part of the record.
Seconded.
All right, thank you. Any board members have any ex parte communication with this case?
No.
Nope. All right, Mr. Featherston, if you would go ahead and address the board, let us know what brings you here this evening, and ultimately in that you can also read your findings of fact if you'd like.
It's Kerry Featherston. It's 1464 North 300 East, Kokomo, Indiana. Basically, we built a house in Water's Edge. It's already built. Some measurements were wrong. It's about 18 inches into the front setback line, minimum build line. Now do I just need to read this? Or any-
Yes.
The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. The house is built already. There's a small step out in the garage, on the garage side, so it's not the whole garage that is inside the master build line, or the minimum build line. It is all away from all the utilities. The use and the value of the area adjacent to the property, including the variance, will not be affected in substantially adverse manner. This is a custom-built home, similar to all the homes in the addition. The adjacent property should increase. The strict application of terms of this zoning ordinance result in a practical difficulty. The situation shall not be self-imposed nor based on perceived reduction or a restriction of economic gain. It is not obstructing any traffic. The home is equivalent to every home in the area.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Sheeline?
Yes, staff findings for case 1V18. The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. This home was built by professionals whose error was an incorrect measurement of 2 feet. Traffic on Artisan Drive and Artisan Court are not affected by this encroachment. It poses no threat to public safety or the surrounding community. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property, including the variance, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. This lot was previously empty but now includes a professionally built home. This raises the values of other homes in the community. The strict application of the terms of this zoning ordinance will result in a practical difficulty. This situation shall not be self-imposed nor be based on a perceived reduction of or restriction of economic gain. This was a minuscule error, and demolition of the site would bring significant cost and inconvenience to the owners of the property. By granting this variance, the home will become legal without further financial strain to the property owners.
All right, thank you. And the staff also has the packet there.
Yeah, it was simply just a mismeasurement, and it does not create any issues whatsoever.
Okay. All right, are there any questions from the board for the petitioner or the staff at this point?
Can I ask how this mismeasurement came to light? Like, how did you discover?
How we discovered it
Yeah.
was basically the survey for the bank for the mortgage. The mortgage guy, I mean, when we measured it, I actually took 2 feet off the garage step, but it's supposed to be farther. I approached the owner, it's like, hey, we gotta take this 2 feet. We took it from 4 feet to 2 feet because I knew we were encroaching it. Somehow, the guys doing the footing got the front up 2 feet. I mean, I measure things out how many times, I don't know how that happened. We've built a lot of houses, and it's never happened.
Does the survey reflect, and forgive my ignorance of engineering, but don't they normally reflect a deviation of plus or minus so many
Yes.
feet in a certain direction? Is there a
Yes.
deviation on this particular survey that,
They wouldn't, I mean, there is
They
a
didn't show that?
deviation that it should have really not even mattered. It shouldn't,
Okay.
I mean.
is it plus or minus 2 feet, the
They
deviation?
have like, it's like 18-something inches, and it was actually a lot closer than what the surveyor found, but it was still gonna be in the setback a little bit, so
Sure.
I didn't even pay for the second surveyor to come done. So, and the surveyor that did it didn't wanna change anything, so. And I knew it was in there still, it was really only in there about 8 inches, but considering it was still gonna be in there and we had to get this, I just
Sure.
left it what it is.
All right, any other questions? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to be heard regarding this case? Okay, hearing none, we do have a motion and a second for the approval of case 1V18. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, congratulations. All righty, our next case this evening is case 2V18.
Yes, the petition of Jeff Carney of Wilmar of Kokomo LLC requesting a variance of 10 feet to section 3.18, minimum front yard setback, and a variance of 5 feet to section 3.18, minimum side yard setback within the M2 zone for property described as part of the southwest quarter of section 8, Township 23 North, Range 4 East, Center Township, Howard County, Indiana, containing 1.56 acres more or less, subject to highway right-of-way, Center Township, Kokomo, Howard County, Indiana, at 2904 South Albright Road. And Mr. Johnson is here to represent this case.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion on case 2V18?
I move that we approve case number 2V18 and adopt the findings of the petitioner as those of the board and make those findings part of the record.
Second.
All right, thank you. Have any board members had any ex parte communication with this case? Nope. Okay, Mr. Johnson?
Thank you. I'm Wyatt Johnson, 555 Market Road, Tipton, Indiana. And I am representing this case for Mr. Carney. He's in North Carolina or South Carolina, I think. One of the two. I know one of the two. I'm not sure which. This is a 3-acre parcel about that had a large house on it. Mr. Carney demolished that house about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, with the anticipation of developing it as a multifamily parcel. It is in the midst of other multifamily developments. It adjoins Albright Road. It only has about, I think, 180 feet of frontage on Albright Road. And we're asking for a variance at the front yard setback of 0 from the 25-foot requirement. And if the board would be so inclined to not grant that, we would like you to consider granting some sort of variance to the front yard setback, because to put the number of units on the property that need to be there to make it a viable, economical project, we just can't get the buildings too close together. And so to make the buildings fit on there at all, if we didn't get some of the setback in the front yard, it just wouldn't work. The side yard setback becomes a rear yard setback because the units will face into the lot on each side. So with that, I'll read the findings of fact from the petitioner. The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because the 40-foot right-of-way along Albright will provide adequate sight distance. The rear yard setback will provide adequate room for emergency access to the property and to adjoining properties. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. The property will be converted from a vacant lot to a modern multifamily development. This should enhance rather than reduce property values in the adjacent areas. The strict application of the terms of this zoning ordinance will result in a practical difficulty. This situation shall not be self-imposed nor be based on a perceived reduction of or restriction of economic gain. This parcel is bounded on the north, south, and west by developed properties. The remaining width and depth of this parcel does not lend itself to development.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Sheeline, would you
Yes.
like to read the staff findings?
Yes, staff findings for case 2V18. The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, general welfare of the community. With the proposed units being built right on the front west property line, they will still be 40 feet from the center line of Albright Road, allowing traffic to continue unimpeded. The 10-foot variance to the rear yard still allows 15 feet to the rear east property line, allowing emergency vehicles to utilize the area. These encroachments will not impact the welfare of the surrounding community. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. The infilling of a now vacant lot with new multifamily units should increase the value of adjacent properties. These professionally built and aesthetically pleasing structures will also fill the need for more multifamily housing in the community. The strict application of the terms of this zoning ordinance will result in a practical difficulty. This situation should not be self-imposed nor be based on a perceived reduction of or restriction of economic gain. The granting of these variances will allow the structures a more central location on the lot, creating more room for emergency vehicles and a safer environment for future residents. The strict application of the zoning ordinance will limit the type and size of structures that the petitioner proposes.
Thank you. All right, questions from the staff for the petitioner or Mr. Sheeline?
Why, when you compare that to the unit south of it, where's the frontage gonna, how's that gonna line up? There's that one. Where's the finish? Where's this gonna be compared to that house?
I'll come back here so I get on the record.
Okay.
It looks to me like that yellow line that outlines our parcel is too close to Albright. But in other words, the 40-foot right-of-way, I think, is farther away from the center of Albright than that yellow line. But
Sorry, that yellow line just shows us the whole lot. It doesn't
Okay,
show that,
so-
it doesn't indicate the right of
Okay,
way. So
that's why it looks so close then.
yeah, definitely.
So those other properties, I think, or other buildings, I think, sit back about 65 feet from the center of Albright. So they'd be sitting back about 25 feet farther than these if we got the full variance.
There's quite a bit of difference between the property to the south and the property to the north. That's why I asked you to compare it to the property to the south.
Let me
See, this guy's all the way back here.
when I said 65, I was looking at the property, the closer property. I'd guess that other one sits back 100 feet or more from the center of the road. But it's sitting back farther than the required setback. So without the variance, the buildings on this property could be set 65 feet from the center of the road or about in line with the closer property there.
And that's the one to the north? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I might add at this time, Beth, I don't know, do we need, I got a letter from a resident who could not be here tonight because of his health. He did send a letter. Do you want me to read this in the record or just have him put it in the minutes?
I would have them just put it in the
Okay,
minutes.
it's from a resident out there, and his concern was kind of what we were just talking about, that with this being pulled closer, it's going to impede the view of his property. It's not going to affect his getting in and out of his drive or anything of that nature, but his concern was that it would impede people seeing his property. So
He had-
we'll make sure this gets put in the minutes.
Yeah, he called me.
Yes, he
and
told me he did
has,
talk to you.
those are rental properties, so he's concerned that people traveling down the road would not see his rental properties, and therefore he wouldn't be able to rent them.
Gotcha.
I don't quite see that as a concern, but
Yeah.
I mean, I understand there is a concern on the setback. And I believe that if we ask for the variance to go from 25-foot setback to 0, the board has the ability to say, we're not going to grant you 0, but we'll grant you 10 or 5 or whatever. But anything would be helpful, because our units within the property are going to either be so close together, it's not going to be desirable, or we're going to lose 2 doubles. And these will be duplexes, not
Isn't the front setback
triplexes or
only 10?
quadruplexes.
The front setback's only 10. It's not 25. It was changed by local ordinance 6855. You keep referring to the front setback
Okay,
being
well, good.
25. So if it was 10, you'd be in compliance with our ordinance.
So what you're saying is we're asking for a variance from a 10-foot setback to
Zero.
a 0-foot setback. Okay. My mistake. I didn't realize that ordinance had changed that.
And the board can, I mean, the board can do a lesser, we just couldn't do more, but we could do a lesser. So
Right.
you do have that ability if you so desire. We went out and looked at it, and the staff, we don't see an issue with it because it, I don't know that our ordinance talks about protecting someone's view of their property. The zoning ordinance makes sure that setbacks are met and that traffic isn't impeded, it doesn't create a dangerous situation. So that's mainly what we're.
Where's the front of the building going to come to that line on the road, is what I want to know. Right
You know where
there.
that
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
On the
question.
yellow line.
On the
He wants to
yellow.
know where the front of the building is going to reach.
In comparison to that yellow line?
Yes.
Does that
If
make
you-
sense, Wyatt?
Basically, how far back from the edge of the road will the building be?
Yeah,
Yeah, we keep talking about 40 feet from the center line, so
I don't have anything.
What is it
It's a-
actually?
It's a 2-lane road, so it's probably a 12-foot lane. So that'd be, the right-of-way would be, the distance from the edge of
28?
pavement to the right-of-way is 40 minus 12, or 28.
28 feet back from the side of the road.
Are you familiar with that tree line out there? Are we talking close to where the existing tree line is?
This one here?
See all those trees right there, so.
It'd be in front of that, it'd be in front of those trees. It'd be in front of the trees on the existing property.
Ms. Rink, you have a question?
No.
Oh, I was gonna say, I was picking up a nonverbal down there, the way you were looking at that.
I hadn't thought of this before, but
This tree line, right?
it seems like there's not a question on the side yard setback, what becomes the rear yard. If there could be, if the motion could be amended so that we'd vote on each issue individually, that would be helpful. That way, hopefully, we'd get passed on the side yard and maybe not get passed on the front yard.
If he's requesting that, certainly. I don't know who made the motion.
I did.
All right.
Sorry.
Did you hear the request?
No.
I apologize.
No, you're fine. Mr. Johnson was asking if maybe we could amend our motion and break it down into one vote on the side yard variance and one vote on the front yard variance. In case
One doesn't pass.
one doesn't pass, then at least they have the other one and they'll just,
That would probably be a good idea from my perspective.
okay.
Well, there's also the ability, as he suggested, to amend and allow for a variance that is different from what is being requested. So you would allow a variance in compliance with the ordinance of 10 feet hypothetically, when he was thinking he needed 25. So that's also a possibility, depending upon, he doesn't actually need a variance for 10 feet. He would be entitled to that under the ordinance.
But we can't draw a line where the 10 feet would be right now.
No, but he would be entitled to it. He wouldn't even need to come to
Okay.
them for that. That's permissible.
Okay,
Anything less than, he needs a variance for.
okay.
So that's also an option for you to
And that would be,
request.
that would be a change from Mr. Johnson's request. I mean, Mr. Johnson would say, I'd like to change my
He would
request.
withdraw. He would withdraw his request for the front side, for the front yard, and we would simply be voting on the side.
I believe I'd like to do that because if I had realized that we had that we only had a 10-foot front yard setback, we might not have even asked for that variance. It does, internally, it still makes it a better project if we can get the buildings out to the street right away. But that 10 feet, if we lose that 10 feet, that doesn't kill us. Because we've got 5 spaces to divide that 10 feet up amongst, so it's only 2 feet closer on each building. So I do withdraw the front yard setback request.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. So we are only looking at the minimum, or the variance of 5 feet to the minimum side yard setback. Now, do we need to do anything with our motion?
Yeah, he needs to amend his motion based on that request.
All right. You're going to have to walk me through it.
That's okay.
So I will amend my motion to remove the stipulation of the 10-foot variance, minimum variance in the front setback, and only include a, let's say, 5-foot.
No, it's still the same
Still the same.
same setback for, and I think it's actually rear yard. We keep saying side yard, but for the rear yard setback.
And so continue the stipulation of a 10-foot variance for the rear yard setback.
Yes, it is 10 foot, you're correct. I don't know who seconded it the first time.
I second.
Okay. Any questions or comments at this point? All right, we do have a revised motion and second on the requested revision on the case 2V18. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Indicate by saying nay.
Did you vote?
Lisa, did you vote?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Aye.
aye, okay. Thank you.
Still trying to figure out the map.
Okay, so that passes.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. You're welcome, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, case 3V18.
Yes, the requested, Adam Evans requested a variance of 6 inches to section 3.6 minimum side yard setback within an R1 zone for property described as part of the northeast quarter of section 14, township 23 north, range 3 east, Howard Township, Howard County, Indiana, containing 0.7 acres more or less at 1401 West Zartman Road.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion on this case?
I move that we approve case number 3V18 and adopt the findings of the petitioner as those of the board and make those findings part of the record.
Seconded.
All right, thank you. Have any board members had ex parte communication with this case? Okay, thank you. If you could state your name and address for the record, kind of tell us what brings you here tonight.
Adam Evans, 1401 Zartman Road. You want me to read this first and then tell you? Or just
well,
tell you one
yeah,
exactly?
go ahead and tell
I
us.
had a fire back in April
Okay.
of 2017, and we're wanting to build back on the same foundation that's been there since 1968. But with the new variances, we're anywhere from 3 to 6 inches off in a couple spots. And we're just wanting to get the variance to build back on the original foundation, because if not, we have to tear the whole foundation out and spend more money to build a new foundation. So we're just trying to get the variance just to get the okay to build a smaller garage. The original garage was a 24 by 48. The one we're wanting to build now is a 24 by 24. And we're just needing to get the variance to have that built.
Okay. All right, if you want to go ahead and read your findings of fact.
The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. The garage is set to the back of the lot and will not be available to anyone. This will not interfere with the visibility of the street. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in substantial advised manner. This is towards the back of the lot, not towards the front of the property. The strict application of the terms of this zoning ordinance will result in the particular difficulty. This situation shall not be self-involved nor be based on a perceived reduction of the restrictions of the nautical growth. It's going to be personal property of a garage for use only, not a business.
Okay. So we have a map here. It looks like, so your garage was 24 by 48. You're using the front half of that slab? As
Yes,
your-
the original slab.
And then what will you do with the back slab? Just leave it?
Just leave it. I thought about maybe putting a basketball goal back there for the kids or a few raised garden boxes.
Okay. Alrighty. And Mr. Sheeline, this looks like it's 6 inches over the side yard setback?
correct.
Okay. You like to go over the staff findings?
Yep. Staff findings for case 3V18. The approval will not be injurious to public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. This garage will be built in the same spot the previous garage was set and stood without prior issue. It is in the back of the lot, will not impact traffic or line of sight on Zartman Road. It poses no threat to public safety or the surrounding community. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Because they are building on the same foundation and smaller than the original, it would be less impactful to the adjacent property than in the past. A newly constructed garage would add value to the property and area. This 6-inch encroachment has existed for some time without negative impact per the Howard County Auditor's Office. This garage was built in 1968. The strict application of the terms of this zoning ordinance will result in a practical difficulty. This situation shall not be self-imposed, nor be based on a perceived reduction of or restriction of economic gain. The petitioner will be using this garage for personal storage and parking only. The loss of the original structure was due to a fire. To move the slab 6 inches would force further financial strain on the petitioner, thus granting of this variance will allow the petitioner to rebuild his garage.
All right. Thank you. All right, any questions from the board at this point? Okay, is there anyone in the audience wishing to be heard? Okay, if you'd step forward, please. Name and address.
My name is Roger Davis. I live at 1317 Zartman Road, Kokomo, Indiana, 46902. As the property owners of 1317 Zartman, I'm here to represent myself and my wife, who can't be here because of the health condition she has. I have questions about the application and would also like to talk to you about the previous damage from the garage fire on that property. Now, the owner of record for 1401 Zartman Road is First National Mortgage Corporation of America. The property is being sold as a land contract with no rights available until the completion of that contract. My first question is there a power of attorney on file and consent given to Mr. Evans to conduct business as the authorized agent on behalf of the owner of record at the time of application? Do you have that on file?
Well, as legal counsel for this board, I'll go ahead and speak up that I've done research on this matter, and I found 2 Court of Appeals cases that actually dispute the position that you're taking. He has, it says an applicant for a variance must have standing. He must have a sufficient interest in the subject matter of that application. He will actually be injured by the government action or prospective action to enforce the zoning ordinance. It does not require it be an owner. He is, as a land contract purchaser, he has the right to make this argument as well.
To sign an application, the application says owner of record or authorized agent. I've read it myself on your application.
I'm telling you how the courts interpreted it. And I'm
Okay.
happy to give you this, I'm happy to give you the
Okay, well, let's move
sites.
on. Let's move on. Okay, the previous fire there, we have sustained financial and physical damage from the previous fire, from the previous garage fire located in the same direction. We are out $9,200 from the previous fire. Now, the Kokomo Fire Department says all accidental, unintentional acts of God were ruled out as the cause of the fire. We lost 100 feet of property fence, had to replace 10 tons of soil to cover the runoff from the fire being extinguished that contaminated the soil for 100 feet and 6 feet from our property line. We also had to erect the temporary fence. Okay, so that is the damage done. Now, the financial damage done to us was our insurance will increase this year and in the future until the completion of the legal proceedings by our Farm Bureau Insurance against the Evans to recoup the $8,700 loss that they paid out in my claim due to the fact that the agent from their insurance company notified me that they refused to accept liability for the damage due to the unexplained cause of origin of the previous fire. Now, I am also out $500 that I had to spend in my insurance deductible to claim it on my insurance. Okay. As a new build that is not grandfathered in because it's a clean slab, as a new build, we ask that the property be up to date with the city proper codes being enforced to protect us from future possible damages and any variance not be allowed for that. There. I have a picture here of the damages from my previous fire in the garage. I cannot allow myself to be in a position where I get the same damages in the same fire from the same property. That is substantial damage to my being for no cause of my own. Thank you for your
I
time.
would like to object.
Your name and address?
Jennifer Evans, 1401 Zartman Road. The fence has nothing to do with the variance of building this garage. We are out a lot. We've lost everything in the garage. All we would like to do is rebuild on the slab for the variance. So we can get it, we have not been able to build since August because he's thrown a fit. I don't see a reason for it not to be built. Yeah, we're out money too, but it wasn't our fault, so that's the law. I would just want the variance we can build and get on with our lives instead of having a dumpster in our driveway since August. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would also like to say that 0.78 acres of land is plenty of property to build a garage under the code of the city that is there to protect the homeowners like me.
Thank you. There are certain things that this board is required to take under consideration, and there are a lot more things that we aren't supposed to take into consideration. One thing I would say, I mean, it's tragic for you guys, it's tragic for you that this fire took place. The insurance, I mean, all of that is stuff that this board has absolutely nothing to do with. We can't take that into consideration. You know, there's a lot of stuff like that we really can't take into consideration. One thing I would say is, I mean, again, it's tragic that the fire took place, but the fact that the garage was there for 48 years, 49 years it sounds like, had a pretty good track record. And we're looking at a pretty minimal variance of just the 6 inches. Hopefully, you guys and your insurance agents, I mean, that's what you're paying them for, to protect you, protect your property and all, and, I mean, I'm really, I think that's where the concern lies,
May I have
is
another
with the,
comment?
certainly.
Absolutely. The variance is 10%. 10% of $9,200 is over $900. Now, would I have got relief if it back the normal 10%? Or did I sustain more damage from my fence because of the heat generated in that 6 inches? I will never know. You will never know. We are asking for the full benefit from the city codes to protect my property.
Okay.
Well, the bottom line is, sir, they are within 6 inches of being in compliance. They are within 6 inches of being in compliance. So my question is, if there, and hopefully there never will be, but if there is another fire, that 6 inches isn't going to make any difference anyway, and that 6 inches puts them in compliance. If it was 6 or 10 feet, I would understand the issue, but 6 inches, I have a hard time understanding.
Well, I have a hard time telling you also that that's 10%. Now, would I have got any dollar amount less than that because of the 6 inches? Absolutely. It would not have caused the same damage that it caused because of that. And just because it never caught fire since '65, hey, that's great, batting 1,000. But when you strike out, hey, who's going to say it's going to be another time? It could be 6 months, a year and a half from now. No one knows. I cannot predict the future.
All right, thank you. And again, that's something, you know, with, if anyone, I mean, I don't expect you guys have been to this board before, but that's something we often get asked, well, what if this were to happen down the road? What if, right, and we don't know, so therefore we can't take those things into consideration. I mean, if we said, well, there might be a fire, or better yet, one that we keep hearing, or that we've heard several times recently is, well, if you put that there, you know what, there was a tornado there before, right? There was, but that doesn't mean we don't ever put anything there, you know, that. So this board is here to,
You built the code.
okay.
It's a flat slab.
All right, did you have anything else to add in regards to the legal stuff?
Go ahead and, you're welcome to ask that. The only other thing that I would offer is, I'm happy to share those 2 cases with the board members if they would like them, but it also does discuss that the government should not impose and create an undue hardship on somebody when they're requesting this kind of a variance, and I am with Director Sheeline that 6 inches seems like it would be an undue hardship on somebody.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions or comments from the board?
Even if we set the garage 6 inches off the slab, we would still have 6 inches of slab that would need to be addressed, correct? Okay.
It's all cut it down.
It's concrete, right?
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we do have a motion and second on the floor for the approval of case 3V18. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Is there any other business to be brought before the board this evening?
I have no other business, Mr. President.
Anyone else? We're good. Okay, well, hopefully you all have a great start to 2018 and continue it in a great way. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded, all approved to adjourn? Aye.
Yo.
I said, yo.
Oh, all right, have a good evening.